Hi everybody, I'm Stacy. I'm a registered nurse. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, welcome in. If you're coming back, I'm so glad to have you. How is this economy impacting you in home health hospice? Let's talk about the financial impacts of what's happening when we drive our own car versus if we drive a company car. I think that's an interesting topic. I was listening to some CNAs talk to some people in leadership about the cost of gasoline and where we're sitting at based on what is recommended. There's recommendations and guidelines for everything, right? Everything that we do has a government guideline and base level. But I have worked for companies that are paying above that base level, and I have worked for companies that offer a company car, and I have worked for companies that do not offer a company car. What are the pros and cons of having a company car versus driving your own vehicle to do home health or hospice? Let's talk about it. And if you like what you see here, then I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. Let's get into it. I have worked in hospice for about 5 years now. Before that, I worked in long-term care for over 20 years, and I drove to and from work, one way to work, one way home every day, same thing every time I worked, and I knew what my mileage was going to be. I have never worked in home health. I do work in home hospice and do see patients in the field. So I know that I've worked for companies where I have had a company car, and usually that involves paying a certain fee every paycheck, and it involves them fixing your car, changing the tires, giving you a gas card. And I will say that when I had that company car during the time that I first started learning and working in hospice, it was wonderful to not put that kind of wear and tear on my own vehicle. And it's really important when you're doing that, if you're using your own vehicle, to have a reliable vehicle that you feel safe in and have good insurance. You have to have good insurance if you're out there putting your life at risk in your car and putting wear and tear on your car. I would say in some situations I preferred the car that was the company car because, again, I wasn't putting that wear and tear on there. When it needed new tires, I took it to get new tires, and it was not coming out of my paycheck. When I needed an oil change or maintenance that was required on the vehicle, it never came from my paycheck. What I paid on that car was insignificant compared to what was being paid for the maintenance of that car, considering the mileage that I was putting on that car. I live in an area where the territory is vast and it takes forever to get 5 miles in the type of traffic that you're in. And when I first started in the Houston area of Texas, there was a lot of times that it took me an hour just to get 10 miles down the road. So that puts wear and tear on your motor, on your air conditioning, on your fan. It does a lot of things that put wear and tear on your vehicle that you don't consider. And having that company gas card was lovely. And I learned what gas stations I could go to that you could get a car wash, and what gas stations had free vacuums, because at that time it was, they had free vacuums at some gas stations if you got a car wash. And so I would do that sometimes. I would get a car wash, run my car through the car wash and vacuum it out, and the car wash could be included in my gas price. So I did. And there was a crack in the windshield. Rocks fly, things hit your vehicle. It was fixed by the fleet company that owned the car. Now, the company that I worked for had Toyotas, and I wouldn't buy one of those for myself, but doing hospice was a really eye-opening experience for what kind of car I would consider driving several miles in. However, now, let me talk about driving my own vehicle in hospice. When you work in a hot climate, for example, I have lived and worked in Las Vegas, the wear and tear on your tires and your motor in that type of heat and dust is just, you would not believe how much wear and tear you put on your vehicle driving in a hot, dry environment, and the things that can happen to your vehicle in the sun. And I'm talking about 120 degrees. And that is the temperature outside, not the temperature that ends up being in your car. It's so hot in Las Vegas that you can't touch the handle without burning your hand. And there was a meme going around with people burning themselves, branding themselves on a penny. I've done it. It's real. It happens in Las Vegas. But it puts wear and tear on the interior of your car. It puts wear and tear on your tires, on the paint job, on the motor. I can't tell you how many times something went wrong while I lived in a hotter climate, while I was driving my own car. And I did get compensated for my gas mileage, but here's the thing. When you get compensated for your gas mileage, most companies don't pay you for your first visit and your last visit. You know, when you're coming home from your last visit and when you're driving to your first visit, because they consider that like you driving to work and driving home from work. And the good thing about the company that I worked for before and other companies is that they would compensate you if it was so many miles over the mileage from your house to the office. So there was like a compensation there. But many times my husband has said to me, they're paying you for gas mileage, but they're not paying you for the oil changes that you have to do. They're not paying for the tires that you have to replace, and they're not going to pay you for any belts that you have to replace, any damage that's being done on your car. And I have been in a fender bender that totaled my car while I was on the clock in my car. And I was sitting at a traffic light and a person hit me from the back in a truck and it totaled my car. And though the accident was not my fault, as I was sitting in a traffic light with a line of cars, I still had to pay the cost of that damage to my car. Because when you drive your own vehicle for a company, you are saying I'm carrying insurance for myself and I'm responsible for the maintenance of my own vehicle. They are paying you for gas, just that. You're not being compensated if an accident happens to your car and your car gets totaled. You are expected to carry insurance that will pay for that. And so I've learned some very valuable lessons about what kind of insurance you need to carry as well. I will tell you, maybe some of you guys know this, but if you are paying for a car, you should have gap insurance. Trust me on that one, I've learned the hard way. You know, when you have full coverage insurance, sometimes they tell you they'll pay your car off, but understand they are not going to pay what you owe. They're going to pay what your car is worth in the Blue Book, in the Kelly Blue Book. So there is no guarantee that your car is going to be paid off and you may be left with a car payment. And now you have to find another car or rent a car to continue doing your job. So I think you should weigh the pros and cons. The pros for me is that I know my car. I live in my car. It's my car. You know, I don't have to think about something that might happen when I'm not at work. Some people have options where you can drive the car anytime you want. Some people have options where you pick the car up at work and drive it to your visits and bring it back to the office. Some people have situations where you drive the car just to your visits and home. So I like that if I need to stop by the grocery store after work, I'm not thinking about the mileage that's being monitored on my car if I stop at the grocery store before I get home, or if I need to run to the doctor during the middle of the day. So those are things to think about when you're thinking about, do I want to pay for a fleet car through my company, or do I want to utilize my own car? Really important stuff, because again, you are putting wear and tear on your own vehicle when you do a home health job, a hospice job. And I think some people don't consider the amount of wear and tear that goes into driving miles and miles. If you see 6 patients a day, you may drive 100 to 150 miles a day. You may drive as much as 200 miles a day, depending on what territory you're covering. Maybe you're covering visits for other people. Maybe you have a patient that's on daily visits, and so you're putting extra visits in that you wouldn't normally put into that day. So I think when you're thinking about doing home health and hospice, and when you're thinking about what is important to me in forms of transportation and compensation, that those are things that you should look at in your package and carefully consider when you want to do home health or hospice. I don't hear a lot of people talking about that, but it is something that when I came into hospice, I really wasn't truly aware of it. I mean, when you drive your car, you know that you're putting your own life at risk every time you get into traffic, because we see the people on the road that don't signal and merge into traffic and cause accidents and do distracted things when they're driving. We see that happen when we're not working. And when you're working, you have to be extra vigilant and extra attentive to what you're doing. And a lot of times your safety class, when you're signing up to work for a company like this, will go over that extensively as well. You can't be driving distracted. If you're at fault in an accident, that's not going to be good on you for work, and it will potentially leave you without a vehicle. So, things to consider. Are you a home health or hospice worker? Do you rent a car from the fleets, or do you drive your own car? Which do you prefer? Why? I'd love to hear about it in the comments. And if you like what you see here, then I ask that you like, subscribe, and follow for more. And I thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.